Welcome to Branding Like a Boss. This is episode 11, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the cannabis industry's most influential brands and the talented minds behind them. I'm your host, Angela Pih, and today we're thrilled to be joined by Kate Ransom, Director of Marketing at Jetty Extracts, a California-based multi-market cannabis company on a mission to create the best damn cannabis products to enhance people's lives and well-being. And in today's episode, we're going to explore the strategies and challenges that Kate has experienced at Jetty. And she's going to give us some insights into how to build a really powerful brand. Kate, welcome to the program.
Angela, thank you so much for having me. I'm just so honored to be among your guests on the show. I think you've had some really fantastic conversations, and I'm so happy to be a part of that.
Well, you've been at Jetty for quite some time, so there are a lot of things that we want to know because you've, been a part of Jetty's 10, now 11-year history, but you have some really solid CPG background, even coming into cannabis. So we want to know what brought you into the industry.
Yeah. My story is kind of a simple one. I am a believer in the power of plants, and that really has been the connective tissue behind all of my professional experience. So that really started off for me in college when I started to have some gut health issues and really turned to food and herbs as medicine to help adjust those. I've been a vegetarian since then, which has almost eradicated those issues. And so saw a huge opportunity for cannabis to be the next evolution of plant healing and bringing better alternatives to people, which is, again, really my mission in the work that I've done throughout my career, from working at Whole Foods Market, bringing organic produce and high quality sustainable meats to people, working at Native, a clean personal care brand, bringing aluminum-free deodorant that actually worked. And then now at Jetty, bringing OCal certified organic cannabis, solventless live rosin to people, just to continue to give better options to help people meet their needs. And, like many people in cannabis, I have, a personal connection to the plant. I have used cannabis to help reduce my use of anti-anxiety and drugs for depression, which I think is a story that so many people have that come into this industry. And is one of the really beautiful things about cannabis, the deep connection personally, and then the professional mandates that just get to come together and be really beautiful. So I'm super excited to have the opportunity to work for Jetty and to help bring their amazing products to more people.
Wow. Well, with such a significant brand like Native, and also a retailer that everybody has known about, which is Whole Foods, all about living healthier, living a more mindful lifestyle. And when you were looking at cannabis as an industry, which has this whole spectrum of, very weedy type brands to brands that are more, wellness or purpose driven, how did that play into your decision of joining a brand like Jetty, coming from your pretty significant background with wellness CPG?
Yeah, I think it was crucial. I really, when I heard about the opportunity at Jetty, it actually came through a recruiter, and they didn't tell me it was cannabis right away. As many recruiters, that's their process for hiring for cannabis. But once I learned that it was cannabis, I already knew enough about the brand and that they were a mission-driven brand, that they offered high-quality products that really aligned with my values and, who I want to be aligned with. I really was interested, and I wouldn't have come and worked at just any cannabis company. It really was their commitment to solventless, Nate Ferguson in particular, their sourcing standards, working with all natural cultivation, that I felt really aligned with who I am and the stories that I wanted to tell throughout my career. And also, I think my education on brand, working at Whole Foods and really working closely with our suppliers in Northern California to tell stories about organic and regenerative agriculture. I felt prepared to help Jetty shape that story, and make sure that we communicated it in a way that resonated with our consumers. So yeah, it's an incredibly important piece of why I'm in cannabis, that Jetty was the right fit. And then, I also think it's more interesting to work on purpose-driven brands, mission-driven brands,
Absolutely.
because they just have a broader perspective on stakeholders. While revenue is important, I think for marketers, it gives us so much more ability to be creative and tell different types of stories when the business that we're working on cares about their suppliers, their partners, cares about their employees, the environment. So there's just so much more fuel for me to add to the fire when I get to communicate why Jetty is the right product for people to try and drive revenue.
Absolutely, because purpose-driven brands are very different from just regular fast-moving FMCGs. And when you think about purpose-driven brands and what they really stand for, what's the storytelling in terms of, your origin story, in terms of your sourcing practices, in terms of your manufacturing. So, how do you tease out those threads from a marketing standpoint as the marketing director?
You just have to find different ways to make that story resonate, or build in those moments. So, for instance, Jetty's Shelter Project. This is a program that they've been running since 2014 to give free cannabis to those in need, specifically focused on cancer patients here in California. Um, what we were able to do from a marketing perspective was create 2 open enrollment periods in May and June, and November and December, that gave us these focused time periods for us to really tell that story in a big way and energize the entire company around that initiative. Before, when that program was still a really important piece of the brand story, but we because it was always something that we should be focusing on or prioritizing, it never got focused on or prioritized. So those are the types of things that marketing leaders can do, is bring that structure to when you're telling the stories, to make sure that you're sequencing all of the amazing things that your brand is doing in a way that you're going to be able to cut through the noise and get that message to the consumer.
I definitely see that. I've seen many brands within our industry have some sort of compassionate program or ESG, but they don't necessarily deliver on it. It just becomes more of a PR play. But I think from what I've heard about the Shelter Project, there are some significant number of patients who are being helped by the brand. And since its inception, just in terms of availability of product, some brands are basically giving away products that are aging out. So instead of underwriting it, then they're actually giving it away. But I think with Jetty is different, right?
Yeah. So the Shelter Project was founded in 2014. So we've been doing this for over 10 years. And in that time period, we've helped over 1,000 patients and donated over $1 million in product. And yes, Jetty takes a different approach. We customize the donations to each of our recipients, which takes a ton of effort and time and commitment from our team that's managing those patient relationships. So we're just really appreciative to the team for the level of investment that they're willing to put into this program. And beyond that, we also donate product from time to time to other compassion organizations. So we just worked with CBCB to donate some of our edibles to their compassion program. So yeah, the Shelter Project is really putting into action, like living its values, which I think is why it resonates so much when we talk about it with our internal team, when we talk about it with bud tenders, when we talk about it with owners. And the really exciting milestone for the Shelter Project this year is that we are able to expand it to the New York market. We
Wow.
have 2 dispensary hubs, one in Buffalo, New York, and one in Long Island right now, where we are currently accepting patients. So really excited to be expanding the reach and growing the numbers in terms of impact for that program.
So that's 3 out of the 4 markets that you're already serving as a brand.
That's correct. Yes, it's available in California, Colorado, and New York.
Amazing. How do you weave different aspects of that purpose-driven type story in terms of the integrity and the discipline of, we're going to get to the topic about clean, which is, really important as part of the Jetty story and it's in the Jetty DNA, but educating from the front lines to bud tenders about what it means to be a clean, a regenerative, focused, and a cannabis brand that's about doing good.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to get more into this later, I think, but the biggest piece is, you want your brand to have both a functional benefit and an emotional benefit. And programs like the Shelter Project, our focus on clean, on all natural agriculture, really feed into that emotional benefit of, is this a product that aligns with my value? Is this a product that aligns with what I prioritize in my life and where I want to spend my money? And so I think you have to do both in order to stand out in this highly competitive market. Product differentiation alone is never going to do it for you. It doesn't do it in CPG. It doesn't do it in cannabis. And so I think we're really delivering on that emotional benefit that this is a brand you can feel good about supporting. And especially if you have, an emotional connection to someone who has been through chemotherapy and kind of lived that experience the Shelter program is aimed at supporting, it gives a really personal tie to the brand that's incredibly meaningful. And as I already said, I think so many people that work in the cannabis industry have those connections either personally or through a family member. And so it's a really easy way for us to just make sure that we are resonating with those audiences and providing value and connecting with them personally.
For sure, because not only is your brand putting the cleanest products out there available, but it's also really taking care of patients and customers. Do you find that, I mean, since we were talking about customers as well, and then now you're in 4 markets, is it California, Colorado, New York, and New Jersey, right?
That's correct.
Do
Yeah.
you find that from your purview as a marketer when you're looking at these markets, and they're obviously in different stages of development, that you message in a very consistent way? Um, what are the nuances from market to market, from a customer standpoint or a consumer standpoint?
Yeah, I think we really do see I see more similarity across the markets. Um there are different levels of like engagement with cannabis within the California market, and we're seeing that repeated in New York and some of the other newer markets. I would say what's different is maybe the level of education. Not to say New York consumers aren't educated, they are, but because cannabis wasn't legal, the conversations weren't had as freely, and maybe some of the terminology is different. And so that's really the biggest hurdle that we're having in the New York market, or the biggest goal for us, is just standardizing that education across the market. So much of cannabis is oral tradition, what you've heard from your friends, what you've seen on Reddit.
Mhm.
And so having like information that's grounded in science, coming from the expert extractors that Jetty has in our leading our production team, is really important because extracts are chemistry. This is not an easy to understand concept all the time. And because of that, it's hard to communicate benefits and differences. So we really have to focus on that foundational education of, here's what these terms mean. Here's why this might be a dirty word. And so an example of this, distillate. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people view distillate as a dirty word, when it really shouldn't be, right? Like
Sure,
we have
especially
all
since, distillate is still the large proportion of all the vape products that are available. So if it's a negative association, it's really not impacting on shopper behavior.
right. Yeah. And so for us, we have a premium distillate, but how do I communicate the difference in benefit between a premium distillate and other distillate that might be on the shelf, to my customer? I have to educate them on what are the ingredients that we're using, what are the types of extracts, what are the testing standards that Jetty does, what are our sourcing standards that go above and beyond, what are our formulation standards in terms of making sure we have a broad spectrum of terpenes and flavorants that are going to improve the flavor and effect and give you that real flower high, that real flower flavor. So I would say that's the biggest difference that I see, and education is coming so quickly. The New York consumer is just hungry for that knowledge, and the bud tender community as well. And so we're actively investing in tools to get that information out there, so that we can continue to communicate why our product is special and the right product for you.
For sure. Just in terms of the depth and breadth of Jetty's products offering in California, being home market, you probably have more within that product portfolio. Is that consistent across all the other markets as well?
We are trying to be as consistent as possible, which makes my job a lot easier. I think in the early days of entering those markets, it was the most different. We only had our high THC, our distillate, in New York and New Jersey. We've been able to get solventless up and running in New York, which has been huge. We have solventless in Colorado. Um, we've been able to bring the Dablicator to all of the markets. So it definitely makes my job easier of communicating across the country with digital channels. Like, you really, Instagram, my message is going to go to consumers everywhere. There's
Mhm.
not a great way for me to segment that just to one market. So really,
It's probably
really,
a good idea not to have a different Instagram channel for each market. That
yeah.
would be just challenging to manage and keep rationalized.
Yes, with all the other unique channels that we have to own across all the different markets, as much as we can keep simplified to like really make sure marketing team's time is being well spent. Yes. So yeah, we have our high THC line and our solventless line kind of available in most places. And then live resin is the one product line that's unique to California.
Amazing. Well, some people don't get into the nuances of packaging. And as you're navigating 4 markets, dozens of SKUs, maybe 100 of SKUs between, vapes, Dablicator, concentrates, the packaging side of things, and I don't think any of the guests in the prior episodes have actually talked about it, but you're in a unique situation where you're managing that complexity.
Yes. So for better or worse, Jetty prints its the majority of its packaging in-house in our Oakland facility. Um, and that has been a tremendous learning experience, but it's also been very helpful, to be so hands-on with that project, to really understand the nuances of the regulations in each market, and really be able to own that from a marketing perspective to make sure that we're compliant all of the time. But it's been really fun to figure out ways to create consistency with the different packaging regulations across all of the markets. And so at a recent all hands, I was able to present our high THC packaging across all 4 markets that we were in. And the feedback from the team was how consistent we've been able to get it. And so I take that as a huge win, as a brand that we know our consumers are, coming to California and trying our products. So to create as much consistency visually as possible to really build the brand, is a key piece of our strategy. And I will say, in terms of, I think New York is the most complex to manage. And one of the like frustrations that we've had is launching our mini tank all-in-one device in the New York market. We haven't been able to show the package, show the product on the packaging, which that cute little form factor is such a huge selling point for that product. And so that is a limitation that's been a little bit challenging and a little bit frustrating. But we have workarounds, and that's kind of marketing. We got to be creative to find solutions to communicate effectively what's in the bag.
Oh, 100%. Because, if we think about the clutter that we see in dispensaries, the strategies that we employ to try to be visible, to stand out, to create those color blocks so that there's the instant recognition of our brand, right? So with Jetty, that dark blue is so synonymous with Jetty, and you guys were the first to come out with the cylindrical shape for vape carts, which other brands weren't using. Do you see that as almost like the calling card? The colors, the shape?
Definitely. I think the color in particular, there's so much green in cannabis for great reasons. Makes a ton of sense. We are ultimately plants are the core of our business.
Sure.
And we wanted to be differentiated. And I think this gets into the conversation around clean, like that blue, that color also speaks to the trust and authority and like thought leadership that we're trying to bring through being leaders in clean in the industry.
I was gonna touch on that because even the shade of blue for Jetty, with that dark sea midnight blue, that when we see in trade dress for Jetty, it's just very recognizable. And then when you layer on the clean story, which you're gonna go into in a moment, it sits really well together. You can see that the blue that resonates, the trust that's already recognized. So when you reinforce it with the clean, um, I think like not just a clean origin story, but just the integrity of clean, and how you explain that. So just in terms of that, the clean standard as being part of the brand, how does marketing and how does the brand actually bring that in across all the customer and consumer touch points?
Yeah, I mean, when you really get to the fundamentals of branding and what does a brand do, a brand is a promise. I think you've said that before. And so clean is really our promise to our consumer. It's the set of standards that we're communicating around our formulations, and the value that we can provide them.
Well,
Um,
let's start further back, right? When I was taught at Popham Barkley, it all starts on the plant. So, without giving away too much, because it's really your story, when we think about Jetty, Jetty doesn't do its own cultivation. It doesn't have its own farm. However, I think it has a unique partnership, right?
We do. In every market, I think, again, Nate Ferguson develops these wonderful relationships with our suppliers. In California, we are partnered with Coastal Sun Farm, and they are one of quite a few now OCal certified farms. And really, Coastal Sun, it goes above and beyond the OCal certification, which is a comparable to organic certification for California cannabis companies, mimics the standards of USDA organic, but is regulated by the state since we can't be regulated by the federal agency. And they go above and beyond those already incredibly stringent agricultural standards, and have a regenerative program using companion plants, and reducing their water and energy uses through their farming practices. So it's been really wonderful to partner with them and get to tell that story for both of the brands around OCal and bringing comparable to organic standards to the California cannabis market.
I think Jetty's still the first and only vape company offering OCal certified products?
To my knowledge, we're the only vape on the market. There's lots of fantastic flower, but yes, we're the only manufactured product that I know of.
Wow. So that OCal certification ties into the manufacturing practices and not just from the plant.
It is full supply chain. So there are chain of custody certifications going all the way back from, clone to when we put it out on the market. And one of the reasons that we love the OCal standard and have invested in that certification is there is a third party audit that is part of that. We annually have an auditor from CCOF, which you are probably familiar with CCOF because they're the same people that certify organic produce. So if you shop at a farmer's market, you will see CCOF seal on your organic produce stalls. But we invite them into our facility once a year. We review all of our manufacturing SOPs for our solventless product line across all of our different product types. So our vape, rosin, and our infused pre-rolls are all OCal certified. And get that approved. They also approve our packaging to make sure that all of our claims are compliant with the standard. But yeah, that third party audit really can give consumers that confidence that what we're saying about our product formulation, what we're saying about our quality standards is true. And it's not just us saying it, it's someone else who knows a lot about organic agriculture.
That must make your heart sing, kind of going back full circle to, to Whole Foods and to Native to be able to bring these types of um, clean product integrity type products and brands into the marketplace, into the cannabis industry, which is really rare. So do you find that bud tenders and consumers, they gravitate towards it or they don't really much mind since they're not accustomed?
It's challenging, right? Like even the way we have to phrase it comparable to organic, that creates a lot of questions and hesitancy with consumers and bud tenders. And so we really have to get directly to them with education, which
Yeah.
as a marketer, education is one of the hardest levers to pull.
Yeah.
But I think there are some significant challenges in terms of how we communicate but once we get that message across, people understand that this is different, this is unique, that this is something that's meaningful. And the fact that we're one of the only brands that's doing it in the vape space and the manufactured product space really speaks to like our commitment to high quality manufacturing standards. So we want to continue to make that investment. And we're really hopeful that the OCal standard or something similar that, eventually there will be a national organics program for cannabis and we can be a part of that. So even though we're not OCal certified in the other markets that we work in, we keep those same sourcing standards where we work with farms that are using all natural agriculture. They're not using harsh pesticides. They're not using synthetic nitrogen replacements because that's really core to our beliefs in terms of what makes great cannabis plants.
Well, that's really valuable, future visioning as well, because it's not just about meeting the customers where they are. It's creating a standard from a leadership, from a brand standpoint that is integral to who they are. And my interactions with your team have always been superb. Just the level of discipline, integrity, and honesty that the entire team really lives and not just speaks about. And the leadership team over at Jetty is pretty unique, right? For if you look at it from a general market standpoint, but within cannabis, so many companies are founder led. So when you came into the cannabis industry 4 years ago, working with a founder led organization, were there adjustments that you needed to make?
I've had the privilege to work with founders in several of my roles. So when I worked at Native, I had a very close relationship with the founder. He really handed a lot of the marketing programs that he was running himself and really bootstrapping to me when I joined the team. And so I think that experience definitely helped prepare me coming into Jetty. But I will say that founder-led orgs have a unique set of challenges, especially for brand marketing teams. And I think one of the biggest ones is separating the founder's personal identity from the brand identity and
Huh.
making it.
What does that
And
mean?
yeah, what does that mean? It means that Jetty offers something that's unique and that's ever evolving, right? And so I think, especially as a legacy cannabis company that's been in operation since 2013, there's so much of who Jetty was at the beginning that we still keep core to the brand. You mentioned Blue. It was really important to me coming into the company that we make more connections back to the name, the
Yeah.
story, the origins of the surf jetty in San Diego. And so building in some of those touch points, but at the same time, recognizing that at that time we were operating in the gray market.
Yeah.
We really were pushing boundaries and trailblazing, and we still are doing that, but we're doing it in a different way today. And so the brand identity needs to evolve to who the brand is today and how our customers are seeing us today. We're not like a rebel, to use the brand architecture. We're trying to be an adventurer brand. We're trying to invite people into what we're doing and along in the journey. Now that we've kind of paved a path, now that we have our standards that we're running by. So yeah, it's so interesting to navigate that dynamic, because the founders are still so connected to who they were when they started the company and who the company was when they started it. And so getting that evolution and getting buy-in for that evolution has been really fun, and is often a challenge for marketers that are working in founder-led organizations.
Well, as a director level marketer, going into that type of context, do you kind of like are you straddling between being a facilitator of continuing to grow this brand, and then how do you make your mark?
Um, yeah, I think you make your mark by continually providing value and, figuring out what are the things that the founders are really passionate about and what are the things that you just shouldn't mess with. So for instance, our founding team loves our high THC strain art. I love it too. I think the illustrations are absolutely beautiful. And it's something, again, that's a legacy piece of the brand. We've been working with the same illustrator since I think 2016 or 2017. And so I knew pretty quickly that that was a piece of the brand that we needed to keep. And now we really lean into that. So as we've launched the high THC line in New York and New Jersey, we have these amazing retail custom displays that lean into that high THC strain art, are so bold, and really have driven awareness for that product line in those markets. So yeah, I would say figure out the things that the leadership team is passionate about, and figure out how to create connective tissue across the brand that keeps those intact, and then also figure out the ways that you can provide value. And so I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, you already mentioned Jetty's mission statement at the beginning of this, but really aligning the leadership team on a mission statement. And now that's a foundational piece of the brand that we use to onboard every freelancer that we work with, every new team member that comes in. And that's really like a source of truth for us in terms of all the content that we produce. Like our social team, we often go back to the mission statement and say, hey, does this piece of content align with our mission and what we're trying to do? So yeah, figure out what are the things that they love, build those touch points in a way that makes sense and creates consistency across the brand. And then yeah, just consistently provide value, provide things that are actionable. I think that's the other thing, is often marketing can be use a lot of self-speak, right? We
Yes.
have a lot of frameworks and a lot of, technical expertise that maybe founders haven't been engaged with. And so going back to those foundations and kind of explaining those frameworks, explaining that terminology has been incredibly helpful to get buy-in for a lot of the programs and initiatives that we're working on.
That's so smart. I think there are also times from a marketing standpoint that even for yourself as a marketer, or when you're sharing initiatives that are in development, that sometimes we're not the representation of the core audience who we're marketing to, and be able to assess from the team, internal team, and go, this really resonates with what the brand represents and who our audience are. Now, I personally might not love this execution, but I might not be the core audience as well, and be able to have that level of self-awareness to be able to make those assessments.
Yes. Customer obsession is, w- yes, is essential to marketing teams. I And I think, to your point, validating that and using data to show that you are speaking to the customer, especially when you don't look like maybe who the customer is. And so some ways that we've done that is through customer interviews, bud tender surveys, consumer surveys, not just cannabis consumer surveys, not Jetty customers. Um, Social listening. We did a big claim study with both Jetty consumers and non-consumers in California and New York to look at the claims that we're making across all of our vape product lines, our collections, and make sure that they were resonating with consumers. And it was great to have that data to go back to our leadership team and say, what we're doing is working, it's resonating with consumers, and here are the one or two areas where we need to improve how we're messaging. And this is our roadmap to do that. So definitely always go back to the consumer, make sure that what you're doing provides value to them. Um, and this kind of goes to that clean conversation as well. Like, clean doesn't mean anything if your product isn't delivering on what it's
100%.
supposed to do, its functional benefit, right?
Yep.
That's the foundation. Jetty does that incredibly well. Our product team is excellent, and we consistently deliver on the effect that people want to have. And then I, as a marketer, get to layer in the emotional benefit, that clean storytelling, that storytelling around our community giving, our shelter project, which then speaks to that emotional benefits that our consumers are looking for and really helps differentiate the brand. But without that foundation of excellent product, those
Absolutely.
stories wouldn't mean as much, right? So
That's
you
right.
really have to have both.
100%. And your reputation as being a very data-led marketer is really important.
Is that
Um,
my reputation? Thank you.
yes, that's your reputation. You'll bring data to the table, to the conversation, to be able to back up a recommendation, right? And also my interactions with you, I notice that it's just not what Kate says, is what the data says, is what the customers are seeing. And that continual need to reinforce, it's not me seeing it as the marketer, it's what the market is seeing. And here's the data to be able to show for it. It doesn't always happen within our industry. So it's something that you've put into practice, which I'm sure sometimes can be challenging and contentious.
I don't find it has been contentious. I think it's been really helpful,
Mm,
especially since coming into Jetty. This was my first role in cannabis, and so having that backbone in data. I kept coming from Native. Native was 100% e-commerce when I joined the brand. It's now majority retail, and it was like shifting in that way my entire tenure at the company. But really great gave me a great appreciation for the power of first party data. And so, I would say to all marketers in cannabis, use your email list. Customers love to complete a survey. If they're passionate about your brand, willing enough to sign up for an email, there's a great likelihood that they'll take a survey. I offer $25 gift cards for a half-hour conversation phone interview with some of our loyal customers, that, like, I want more information from their survey data. That is incredibly invaluable. And bud tenders love to share their experiences. Like, get into retail and talk to bud tenders. They're talking to your customer, they're talking to other brands, your competitor's customer. So getting consumer data doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be arduous, you can figure out ways to get that information at low cost, low investment, through a Google form and an email list. And so Instagram polls, I think there's all these ways that brand marketers sometimes overlook, and they try to make it more complicated than it needs to be. But there's so many easy ways to collect and get that feedback from your consumer through digital channels.
That's really valuable. And I hope, marketers out there take your advice, because those tools are available, they're free, and it doesn't have to be arduous at all. When you're collating a lot of this data, do you start this at the beginning of new product development, or it's continuous assessment? Because this dovetails into what's ahead for Jetty. Are there more new products coming along? Are there new markets coming along for the rest of 2025?
Yeah. I would say keeping up to date with your consumer is constant. You should constantly be in contact and getting feedback from the market. But yes, I think using product launches or product expansions is great times to really focus on a specific product line. So for instance, we're really focused on improving our pre-roll offering. And so I've been doing a lot of customer interviews and surveys around pre-rolls over the last 6 months to help inform that innovation and what's actually going to move the needle with our consumers, right? We just already said, but functional benefits that our product team sees is like, oh, this is so cool, like hash infused or rosin infused, whatever it might be, triple infusion. Going back to the consumer and validating, does this actually align with your needs, is super helpful piece of the puzzle when you're bringing new products to market. But in terms of what's next for Jetty, I think we're really focused on going deep. That has been kind of the key to our success in California, is just being relentless and singularly focused on the market and going as deep as we can with the product offerings that we have. And then I think New York is really where we see the most growth opportunity. I think there's a lot of brands that feel that way and are really focused on New York. Jetty is one of them. We're going to be really deepening our product offerings there, making sure that all of our operations are smooth, both from like product, but also from a marketing standpoint, and investing in that market. So I think a lot more to come for us on the East Coast, and really just continuing to be laser focused on driving solventless, continuing our leadership there.
Oh, so excited that there's going to be more solventless products out there, and you guys are really the standard, when it comes to clean at scale. When people ask me about Jetty, and I was like, Jetty's one of those rare brands that's actually able to offer clean at scale and craft at scale. A lot of times we're not really seeing that because of, whether it has to do with margin or price point, or just the cost of holding that level of really great quality products and doing it out there.
Yes.
Well, here's to connecting with you and how audiences can reach out to you to learn more or to read about you on LinkedIn. So what's the best way for them to get in touch and to continue to learn from you, Kate?
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the place to connect with me professionally. I'm at Kate Ransom on there, and look for my pink background. But yeah, I would love to hear from the audience.
Amazing. Well, here's the last fun part of our podcast, which every guest gets to answer. And that is, if you had a cannabis themed superhero alter ego, what would it be and why?
So I'm just gonna shout out my brother really quickly because he just had a baby, and so I've been spending a lot of time like hanging out watching TV with him and the baby. And I am not really a superhero person, but he is, and so I've watched a lot more Marvel, and so I felt better prepared to answer this question because of all the time I've been spending with my brother. But I think like Jean Grey is kind of the who my inspiration would be, and telepathy in particular. But
Mhm.
I really see like my value in Jetty's organization and marketing's value as a function in the organization is understanding the consumer, understanding the budtender, understanding the buyer, all of the audiences that we have, and also understanding the product team, and then being able to bring those things together. So telepathy is my superpower, and I think Gene Green is my
I
cannabis.
love that, because you do have to be a mind reader, as a marketer, right? And also to have that superpower to bring everybody together. So there's that level of cohesion that we bring to a conversation, and and bringing really important initiatives to market.
Agreed. Yeah. So telepathy, power of social
Oh,
listening.
I
Yeah.
love that. Well, thank you so much, Kate, for joining us on Branding Like a Boss. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing so many of your insights and learning with us. These are incredibly valuable, and I'm sure they're going to have a significant impact in the cannabis industry. So keep doing everything that you do. It's 4 years plus, which is for the cannabis industry really, really rare,
Yeah.
especially for marketers to be in their role for 4+ years. So congratulations. And for the audience, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode of Branding Like a Boss. Until next time.
Yes. Thank you so much, Angela. It's been great.
Thank you.